Looks like I'm late to the party.
Hello, Charles.
Hey, good morning. How's everybody? Or afternoon or evening?
Afternoon. Yes, fine. And you?
I'm well. A little early for me, but it's actually not that it's so early. It's usually I used to start work at around 7 a.m. an hour before now for here. But since since everything's kind of changed schedule wise, everything seems to shift later and later in the day. So I'm expecting us to have a hey, Andres, how are you? I'm expecting to have a little less turnout this week, but that's okay. I'm still surprised we see a lot of people from closer to my time zones. Show my screen here. Get started.
Actually, it would be interesting, Charles. What portion of your clients, developers are from Europe?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't have an exact stat. I can give you kind of a guesstimate. And it's changed actually a little bit. Initially, it was about 70% of our developers were in Europe. And then that was in the first, say, 6 months. So that I guess minus 1.5 years from now. And then it changed. Actually, I'm just going to start a recording here before we get into things too much. So just give me a quick sec. I want to make sure.
It's already recording, Charles.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So then it changed a little bit, and the North American side went up, and then Australia and Asia went up a little bit as well. So now it's about maybe about 20%, I would say, in 25%, something like that, 25%. So, all right. Oh, I don't know if I'm sharing my screen here. I guess I should do that. Huh? Okay. Well, I figured we'd have an earlier time zone, or earlier time. So we shifted, I guess, an extra 3 hours or so from our regular time to hopefully include you guys, whether you're in Australia or whether you're in Europe and what have you. Does this work out a little bit better? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, for me it's 2:00 in the afternoon, so that's fine.
Right. I think this is a time if you have to have something it's almost ideal for everybody around the world for the most part, almost. So I figured that this is kind of part two of our mashup of various things. We don't have some fixed topics. I got a couple things I want to show you that we're working on behind the scenes. And we're going to do a little bit of a meet the dev type thing today as well. A little later on, we'll just make sure he's online here. We'll sort of going to touch base with Damien Kelly in Sydney and see what he's been up to with BetterForms as well. One of the things actually I wanted to talk about even before we start here is JavaScript is becoming pretty popular in terms of the popular or the hot topic in FileMaker. And I live about 70, 80% in JavaScript for the most part these days. Is that something that you guys, everybody would be interested in learning more? Like if we had little mini lessons, or would you rather have almost like a course on JavaScript for FileMaker developers? Not talking about BetterForms at all, but just from a FileMaker development aspect. Is that something that people are interested in?
Yes, absolutely. I would be very interested.
Because I see a lot of I've helped out at the some of the dev cons and things, teaching lessons and things, and I kind of feel some of the direction that the popular, I don't want to say courses, but videos and things that people are doing are not necessarily getting FileMaker developers to where they need to be. Like I know myself when I'm learning something new, because I'm already a developer in other areas, I want to just jump right into the stuff. Give me an example. Let me take it apart. I can hack up. I can find out that word and change that word to my word. And that's almost good enough. And I was thinking maybe we can put together a bit of a functional JavaScript course, if you will, or not so much from going all the way from the beginning, but just tell me the important stuff that I really need to know.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll do that. We'll do that maybe in a couple weeks. We'll put together maybe a 20-minute segment or something like that, and we'll try to mix that in into our regular Friday live. If you have any questions, please jump in. The whole goal of these meetups is that they're a meetup rather than a webinar. So it's not super organized. It's more of a gathering, and the whole goal here is just to hang out and kind of get outside of our home office that we're stuck in these days. Try to encourage people to go cam on if possible, because it just makes things a little bit more personal. Got a number of topics that I want to touch base on, and then we can kind of flip things around a little bit. We're going to continue with some under the hood questions. If you have any questions about how BetterForms works on the lower levels and things like that. A couple more things I want to show you today, and they're really beta, or alpha, I guess you could say. It's on our roadmap. Some things on our site templates and form templates are going to be coming out. They will be coming out really soon, but they are early in development. Talk about components, which is really exciting, and a few other things from there. So what I want to do is I want to start off with some new templates that we're coming out with, and how that's gonna work. So one of our goals with BetterForms, and we never had this. We didn't have this. We sort of started off in a weird direction. We had started off using the platform for clients right from the beginning. In fact, before it was a commercial product. And because of that, we never had a true onboarding experience. So I tend to do more one-on-one training with all the developers, because it's really important that everybody has, a positive experience, help get people up and running. We have a really high level of support and so on. So, but in order for us to scale, we need to have an autonomous onboarding mechanism, and people need to get to that aha moment really fast. Currently, it takes somebody about 2 hours or so, about an hour and a half with one-on-one training. And if you've done any training with me, it takes about an hour and a half before we get to that aha moment where it's like, oh, wow, my data that's my FileMaker data, and it's on the web now. And our new landmark is 15 minutes to the aha moment with no help from anybody. So in other words, self-starter can hop in, click a few buttons, and be connected to FileMaker within 15 minutes. So I want to show you a little bit how we're going to do that, or at least, and maybe you guys can give me some feedback.
So we still had to do it the hard way, Charles.
Pardon me?
We still had to do it the hard way.
Yeah, you did. But you know what? I have noticed there's been a number of people, the last, I would say maybe the last 10 onboardings, I've done a lot less. And it's not that I want to do a lot less, because I enjoy the onboarding sessions. They're really good. But it's not as scalable, unfortunately. So we're changing it. We're changing the strategy around. We have Jason, one of our devs, part of our team, is, let me just see here quick here, is changing the where he's been working a lot on the background, and there we go. And this is one of the projects that you can't really see the code that he's been working on, but we'll see a bit of the benefits. And it doesn't look like much right now, but it's going to be a really game changer for BetterForms. And it's basically, we're changing the concept of having sites, and over on the left-hand side, we have these sites, pages, and apps, sites, pages, and servers. And really, this was designed by a FileMaker type person, a database person, me. And we tend to think, in entities or in tables, but that's not really the reality, or end relationships, but that's not the reality of how we work as for building an app. So we really have an app workspace. And then within that workspace, we have, things that are global to that application, things that are specific, like the layouts of the pages, and so on. So our new interface is going to kind of cater to that with this concept of environments. And then we'll end up introducing development environments, staging or testing environments, and then production. So I want to show you a little bit, just part of that. We're not going to really get into the environments part, but we are going to look at a typical new user experience. So they're going to basically start off something like we can see here, and they're going to create their first app. And in order to do that, we're going to have a number of starter templates. These are kind of placeholder ones. They are templates, but they're very minimal. And the idea is that you can find something that you want to start off with. I'm going to pick the Hello World one for today, but maybe I want to start off with some type of client portal, or maybe I want a payment landing page and a gateway so people can check their invoice statuses, right? Some of those common, really, really common use cases. So I want to start off with Hello World, and I'm going to pick my app name. I'm going to call it Hello World. And my site, I'm going to call it Hello World as well. For some reason this week there we go. And the domain, I'm going to say HW, and it's going to verify, yes, that domain happens to be available. I'm going to advance on to my next step. I'm going to pick my server. I can add a server here as well if I need to, but I already have some in here, so I can pick my server that I'm going to connect to. And there will be a preview here of what the application will look like, or at least a page that kind of represents like a screenshot that would represent my new app. I'm going to click Build App. And what it's going to do is it's going to redeploy a starter template, kind of similar to FileMaker starter templates, or you have that type of concept. And it's going to provision my domain and build all my pages and start my development environment. Now, the page that it's landing on is just in development. This is not going to be what it's going to look like. We haven't, Fred hasn't got to looking at the UI yet. But I am sort of starting to mock some things up only so we can use stuff internally. So please sort of just ignore this. And so now I have my site is actually made. So I'm just going to go over to my old system here just for a second. And here's my new app, Hello World. Now, we literally just put this front end together this week, so it doesn't actually wire some of the stuff up. So I'm just going to manually add a domain here really quick. I think I maybe made HW3. Let's go do that. Figures. Just a second here. I keep going through burning through these names here without removing them. HW Friday. There we go. So let me just add this in. If you're ever wondering what's happening behind the scenes right now, BetterForms is communicating with our infrastructure, part of the servers, and it's basically creating a certificate for that domain that we just created. And then it's attaching the certificate to the domain, setting up some DNS stuff, and so that when we go to here, we have an actual site. So hopefully this works. Actually, it may not, because my templates are. I'm just gonna, like I said, this is very, very early, so some of these things are gonna change. I'm just gonna change the version of software here. And if you ever change software and you're ever wondering what's happening there, for every version of software that we release, there's an actual separate server, physical server, not a virtual machine, but a chunk of a virtual machine. So it's even smaller. It's a pod or a container that is used, that it's instantiated to run that version. And that's why we can pop out these versions really, really easily. Okay, so let's try this again.
So if something doesn't work, Charles, in a new version, you can easily switch back to an old version.
Can you say that again?
If something is wrong with a new version, or the app you made.
Yes, yeah. So if we release a new feature, for example, we're just coming out with this concept of components. I'm probably not going to get into them today because I broke something literally last night. But components are going to allow you to take really small chunks of code or medium-sized chunks of code and make them super small and represent them as a single block. So instead of having these huge things in your schema, that's all going to get rid of. It's all going to disappear, and you're going to find a component that looks really cool that somebody else built, and you're going to be able to add it into your site and customize it exactly as you want it. And let's say we introduce a feature like that, and then we find out there's a problem with it, or it's not compatible with your production site. You're going to be able to spin up another production site with the new version, or probably a staging site with this new version of software, test everything out and say, okay, there's a couple problems. I see what I have to upgrade, go into the changelog, find the breaking changes, and I upgrade things. And then when I know that it's good, I can push that version of code, the stuff that I updated, out to my production site. And if I realize, oh crud, I've missed something, I can roll everything back, right? So I'm not only going to be, not only you can change the base code that BetterForms runs on, but you'll be able to change your entire site. We can now take snapshots of your entire site and a version history of all your pages, of all your edits, based on a couple rules. Like we can't keep it, otherwise it becomes an exponentially large amount of data. But your most recent edits and things where you've made you've locked in versions, you've taken snapshots, as well as your site and your server configuration. So now we'll have these separate environments, and we'll talk a little bit more. I'll show you a little bit more about how that works later on. So this is our Hello World site, and it doesn't look like much, but what's significant about this is this could be an entire application. It can be an entire CRM or an entire anything that we want, and so I have my 2 pages. This is where the worlds would go. And so it's very, very simple right now. It's just, like I said, this is not so much a proof of concept, but we haven't built the templates yet. Now, let's say I want to add onto this, right? So that took me about maybe a minute or so to deploy this. The helper file is going to have a lot. We're going to have a version 2 of the helper file, which will do a lot more self-configuring and be able to connect to your backend database, plus a demo backend database that's already configured. So you basically install those 2 files and everything will be, your Hello World application will actually be connected to your server and running. Go and hack that up as much as you want. Excuse me. Okay, so the next part of our experience that we're trying to improve is adding pages into the site. So traditionally, when we're adding pages, we would go over to page, we maybe find an example or a template. This is my account here. And I would find something and I would hit, I go into the page, whatever example, here it is. And I'd usually hit duplicate. That brings it over to copy into my my workspace. And then I'd go and hack that up. And I would have to grab the UUID and go over to sites and then paste the UUID and so forth. So now what we have is, and this will be coming out soon as well. And this is all part of the same underlying code that's generating things. So now we'll have a number of starter pages, and the starter pages will already be designed for you so that there are things like they're responsive, they're categorized by how easy they are to use. If you're a real beginner, this is a really simple page. This one here has a lot more advanced stuff, just like in FileMaker. If you can have a really simple layout where you just plop fields on. You can have something complicated with a lot of conditional hiding and layering of objects and all kinds of tricks and things like that. But that would be terrible for somebody to start off with. That's funny. So sorry, I was just reading the comments there. So in this case, I want to onto that site that I just added or just created. I want to add a Stripe payment page. So normally that's a big thing, right? To build a Stripe page and have it all the functionality and all the actions and all of that stuff working together. But I'm going to pick this one here. I have a couple other pages here as well. So I'm going to say new next. The internal name is going to be demo Stripe page. I picked the site. Now in the future, we're not even going to pick the site. Here's my Hello World demo, and I want to put it under a key called Stripe. Payments. Payment. There, we'll just go payment, something like that. And of course, there's something. And the demo demons have. I'm just gonna see if it's something I've done here. Let's just try this again. Hello world. Okay. All right. So I'm going to add that page. Now what this is going to do is this is going to take that page and it's going to wire it into my site. So the page is already connected to my site. It's already part of that entity. I've already determined where it's going to sit. And for the most part, I'm done. I do have to do a couple things here though, which that Stripe actually required. This won't work right away, so I have to refresh the page. We're looking at doing some live refreshing too. That's some other stuff that's happening. STRIPE. And let's see if I've done this correct. And the demo. Yeah, we'll see. Sorry.
Demo gods every time.
Every time. Well, you know what? In fairness, it worked 6 hours ago when I did it, right?
It works.
But look, this stuff is brand new. But I just want to do
it always works 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. So okay. So you can see the Stripe page is wired up in there. I'm just wondering what I've missed here. Refresh. Let me just check this. Okay, that's a bummer. It really did work last night. But again, this is brand new stuff. But basically the page is wired up and you end up with this page that will look something like.
Perhaps the page needs to be saved or something?
No, it's something else probably. I don't want to, I'm sure I can solve it, but I don't want to look right now. But you'll end up with a page like this and it'll be wired up to the site. So here, I'll cheat. Yeah, that's fine. Oops. There. So that's the whole idea, is that you'll be able to take something like that. Now this page it's relatively simple, but what's really, really key is we've already taken care of all the hard stuff. Like, how do you make these repeating rows? How do you make it look nice? How do you make it responsive so that it's going to fit perfectly? Like you can see the margin size changes here on a mobile device, right? So it's and it scrolls and so on. So all of that stuff, all of those things that we're always, pinging Slack for and say, hey, how can I make this? I got this so far, done so far. What do I need to do next? And this is using Stripe's new element. We have a couple payment gateways in BetterForms. Well, not a couple. We have both 4 built in, and then we've probably implemented another 5 or 6 in total. This postal code here, a zip code. We don't have a zip code in Canada. We have a postal code, but it's based on the sample card that I put in here. So if you open this widget up, this page up in your region, different elements in here show up, and that's part of Stripe's widget here. So what's really, really neat about this new Stripe gateway, this is slightly off topic, is the old Stripe. Our old Stripe examples used a custom elements payment gateway. This one here. They used a.
Right?
Pardon me. Can you say that again?
The example that you guys had from the start used the inbuilt Stripe widget, so it was just like
yeah.
library. And remember, we started messing with this. We're like, how can we make this more customizable, because you have no control over this.
Exactly. So this one here is using, these are both Stripe library, but they're using the library 2 different ways. This is version 2, if you will, of their widget. And it's a great widget. You can configure everything on here. You can make this button dynamic and all kinds of stuff. And we have some examples. There's the old example page has, if I want to pay $9 and I go like this, that's okay. It says you have to pay $9 and so on. So that's the way the old one worked. But the new one is even nicer because you can embed it into your page so that it's a seamless experience. Now, users don't mind really this. We don't think twice about it. But given a choice, this one is much better, right? You can have much more detailed branding. Now, what's really, really cool is you can determine, you can set the styling and the theming of this particular element as much as you want. And in this case, it's actually fully secure still, even though it's sitting in the BetterForms page. We're never seeing or touching any of that data. This is actually an iframe that's sitting right in here. So it's perfectly seamless. You can actually break these components. They're called stripe elements. And you can take the card and put the card over here, and you can take the expiry date and put it there, gather as much information as you need to process that transaction. Generally speaking, the more information you gather, the more successful the transaction is and the less fraudulent it looks. I click pay now. The button's got a built-in spinner and it completes. And then if I was to look under the hood here, normally we would call FileMaker after this, but you can see in this case, it came up with an error because the API key is incorrect. That's in my demo here. But otherwise, the transaction's done. So the only thing you need to do something like add a payment gateway now is to do a little bit of the back-end code. We've already done that either for ourselves and we've done it for other people. So you can basically take our code, which will be in our example file, and copy those APIs because they're written in a standalone fashion. So you can literally paste them into your application, add the API keys, and everything will just work. So that's kind of the goal of having these page templates. This is something that it's a process that if somebody came up to you and said, hey, can you put, I don't know, WorldPay, I think as Paul Jansen just asked me about, can you put this into, can you build this into our FileMaker application? Normally that would be probably an expensive task because you got to go through all these API calls and stuff. But we as developers can kind of leverage our own experiences or our own code by sharing that in some of those API gateways and whatnot, and the same thing on the front end, and it's done. So does that kind of seem like it would be a better experience?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, super quick onboarding. Like I think people will be up and running super quick.
Well, I mean that's the goal.
Yeah.
It's when you're adding a new page, when you go to do something, if you have all of these resources, you can build out some really thick apps. And that may be a bad thing too, because you might be building out a lot of stuff we don't need. But you can build something like this into your, and you obviously don't have to style it like this. You can change that very, very easily. But you could whip that together in literally 10, 15 minutes. And now I have a whole payment gateway. And I think that would be, crazy powerful for things. So that's, pardon me?
When you were talking about the Hello World sort of deployment of that kind of, just click a button almost and get a site, will that include the FileMaker backend as a demo file?
Yes. Yeah. We want to have.
For me, it's that integration part that.
Exactly. So we want to, we actually do have a backend demo that Eric was working on, and then we kind of jumped off of it, but we will complete that, and it'll have all of the sample code for all of the different workflows and processes, because BetterForms is integrated to FileMaker, obviously. So we really kind of need to know how to process some of that data. So it'll have a lot of best practices in it, like, hey, I have an array that has child arrays inside. Like, how do I go through that array and then write all the child records, which are portals, and then the children of those? And how do I do that efficiently and without, going crazy in terms of code? That's something that's a kind of a challenging problem. And it's a lot of work, and we have to repeat that all the time. So one of the things that Jason's working on is a very simple script, and it's a universal, we call it a universal CRUD. We talked a little bit about it in our API first design, but this is a third version of it. And you'll be able to take an array that has children, that has children, that has children, and you call this script and it just writes all the records and it's done and does it all in a transaction. It's pretty cool. So things like that, all of those kinds of processes, you'll be able to pick and match and hack them up and get to your goal a lot quicker. That's the goal anyway. We're not sure totally how the interface will be, in the sense of, like, do we just reference maybe some scripts in a file? Do we have multiple files so that it doesn't become too confusing? Because, with maybe 200 example pages and maybe 75 back-end workflows, that could be really, really confusing. I mean, we have a pretty clean separation of concern when it comes to the hooks and the pages. So you'll be able to say, this is the stuff that's in that folder. So I think that won't be too bad.
I think just having one example that demonstrates conceptually almost how you plumb in the FileMaker scripts and how they access the data model and push
Right.
stuff back out into the data model. I think that will be a massive shortcut for people.
The neat thing is, the example we have is called Deep Divers. And it's basically a deep dive into things. And it's a fictitious, invoices, create records and things like that, so that we can host that live. And you can interact with it, and then you hit a button and you download that actual database that we're using in the back end. So that the real goal here with all of this kind of stuff, and anytime you're doing all these examples, documentation, all of this stuff, is one thing I've really learned is you have to build some build chains. You have to have the ability to make a change and not have to do a bunch of other stuff, not have to upload a new file, download a file. The version of code in BetterForms that changes the slowest is our helper file, because it's such a pain. Right? It's such a, we have to download the file, we have to strip it all out, our master version, and we don't have a really clean build chain for that. The stuff that we can deploy, literally put out sometimes 2 or 3 versions in a day, is our base code, because we hit a couple buttons and then it just takes care of it and it deploys it, and it's already in data centers and everything. So if you can get those build chains, and I think Damien's going to talk a little bit about that. If you can get those in place, it makes such a difference in being the ability to have continuous integration and continuous deployment. So I think that is all from my bits that I wanted to show you guys, and just to give you an idea what's coming. And then as far as time goes, I've got a couple other things I really mentioned really quick too. But as far as timing goes of these features, we're really pushing hard on them. They're the number one thing that we're working on right now. Actually, the number 2 thing we're working on. The number 1 thing we're working on is new infrastructure. We're currently, I wouldn't say single source, but we're unisourced in terms of our upstream providers. We use a company called Zeit, which is a serverless deployment technology, and they operate on AWS and Google Chrome and so on. So we're going through that middle person to connect to the bare metal of our system. And Eduardo, part of our team, is currently working on and making great progress, working on a new infrastructure system. And we'll be able to have much higher availability. We don't usually have too many data server problems or data center problems, but we have had a couple glitches. But we'll be able to have more data centers. We'll be able to spin up data centers, and we'll also be provider agnostic. So that means we can primarily we'll be on AWS, but we have the ability now to be to deploy onto Google Cloud, to Microsoft Azure, to DigitalOcean, to Linode, any of those providers and their data centers, and they'll all work seamlessly with our architecture. So it's really neat stuff. Once we get that in place, we're going to start to migrate people's sites over the next week, starting in 1 week from now, April, the end of the month. And that'll be seamless. The people who have custom domains will probably have to get you to point the domain to our internal alias receiver, and then but that'll all be a very seamless, very easy process. So that's something that's coming up that's going to be brand new as well. Does anybody have any questions about anything so far? All right. I'm going to stop my screen share, and maybe we can jump to Damien.
Yeah, I'm here.
If you're here, there you are. And I don't think I have to change anything, and you can just share.
Yeah, I should be just be able to share screen. So tell me when you can see my screen. It should just be like a doc.
Sorry.
Put a whole bunch of crap on it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, fire away.
Can you introduce yourself, Damien? I've no idea who you are.
No, I'm not willing to introduce myself. My name's Dave.
Very secretive down there.
I'm a FileMaker developer from Sydney, Australia. I've got a vertical product, or a SaaS product as Charles calls it. And I've also got a second business which does custom development. So I do both sides of the FileMaker, the world, I guess. And I really love, what Charles has done, because I just feel that WebDirect was a very poor experience, given it's out of the box for FileMaker, which is great. And that's, you know, like I know Andrew Mallison's on the call right now, and he's done some really good stuff with WebDirect. I just wanted a pure web experience without the hang-ups that were from FileMaker. So my goals were really just, how can I extend FileMaker to a pure web experience where it's needed? And that's Andrew Mallison. He'll get the, he'll get the sales commission, I'm sure, for introducing me to Charles. But I just, what Charles has created here, the framework is just, I love it. Like, I'm just constantly thinking right now, what else can I do with this? How else can I better the FileMaker solution that I have? So it was a bit of a rant, but yeah, I'm a FileMaker developer. I live in Sydney, Australia, and love FileMaker. That's all I know, really. I don't know JavaScript. My extent of JavaScript is through Charles. And I guess, yeah, a massive kudos to Charles for what he's created, because it's opened a lot of possibilities and just stuff that I would have to send off to web developers and have no idea how to manage. Whereas now I can manage the web side of things without being a web dev. So hopefully that gives you, that's my intro. Hopefully that ticks the box. But if we look at my screen right now, I just kind of want to give you an architecture of my vertical or SaaS solution. So we've got a FileMaker server, and I've got multiple business files, right? So if you work with Charles, he references the file as a business file. And this is all great. It's all hosted. It works brilliantly. Actually on the wrong slide. It works brilliantly. You're opening FileMaker, it's hosted, it works fine, not a problem. With a vertical solution, there's just a few additional things that you need to factor in. So has someone paid their subscription? So I've got what's called a FAT controller, which means that when business file 3 opens their file, it's actually going to ping this via FileMaker's API and say, hey, does this file, are we allowed to let this guy in? Is this file up to date? Have they paid? Is there anything wrong? Great. So when this file opens, it pings the FAT controller, which is like, it's a dumb database. It's got a file name and whether they're allowed in. It's got a few other things, but for the purposes of what I'm trying to get to, it's the gatekeeper. So they'll open the file, it'll launch, and it'll check here, are we allowed to proceed? Yes, cool, great. Then their file opens and it continues, right? They're actually opening this file. This happens behind the scenes. They've got no idea what's happening. So this is all good and well, perfect, great. But now I want to extend BetterForms, and I want to have a web front end for my customers. So to give you a bit of context, the vertical is for the shade and shutter and blinds and roller blinds solution industry. So they don't care about any of this. They just want to know stuff works. They've got zero, they don't care about the architecture behind this, that it's BetterForms and it's FileMaker server and it's AWS and any of that crap. They've got zero concerns about that. They just want to make sure it works. So the business solution effectively was internal only. It managed like sales, quotes, invoicing, all that kind of stuff, but it never extended to the end customer. And that's where BetterForms stepped in, which was, well, we can now give my clients, which is these guys, the business file one, we can give their customers a way to interact with their data really well without incurring any kind of FileMaker licensing or any of that crap. And it's super quick, it's responsive. Like the framework is it's just amazing. Like I tell Charles all the time, like this is killer what you've done. It's just next level. So I just want to set a preface of how, this is a server, and this is a file that's connected to a server, but this is an Australian server. I've also got one in America. So the same structure is completely transferable, and it's just brilliant. So now what I want to do is kind of show you and jump in with any questions, like happy to answer it.
How did you get started in the blind shutters and shades? Like, how did that come about?
Great question. So it was like a custom job. It started off as a custom job. Like, hey, we're in this industry. We want an app that makes our quoting easy, because they would turn up your house. They would like literally measure your windows on paper. They'll do this 6 to 7 times, so 6 to 7 hours a day, go out and quote. Then they go back to the office and they would like look up, like I'm talking, I've got rid of the physical material, but there would be a A4 binder of like pricing for each supplier. So they'd then go, which is a price grid, like X and Y. So they go like, okay, well, the width is like 1272 millimeters and the drop is 876 millimeters. And then they would meet those 2 points, and that's the cost of the blind. And then they would have to add in extras. Like if you want a stainless steel chain, this was all manual. So they would, during the day, quote, then they would go back to the office, write this up, and then shoot out this information to the client. So the efficiency was just ridiculous. Everything was logical though. They just didn't have anything in place. So that's how I got involved in this. And it started out as a custom job. And I use the word custom meaning a one-off. But then me and the director of the business that was the customer, we decided, well, should we try and take this to the industry? And we both made the decision to, yes, let's do that. And that's how we ended up at where we're at today, I guess.
So you're still partners, or?
Absolutely, yeah. So
right.
We started a new company and I got him in at like 50-50 because he's been in the industry. He's got the contacts. I'm a software developer. I know no one in the trade, and I'm not in sales. I'm not here. I'm a terrible salesman. I'm not interested in sales. I'm interested in technology, but sales that's not my thing. So we teamed up, and he's got massive relationships in the industry because he's been in the industry for 20 years. And the contacts that he has is actually assisting us going to market. So rather than us cold calling, we're going through the suppliers, which is the contacts he's had, to just tell everyone about what we've done. So
I think that's an ideal scenario, is when you have, we can still continue to do this stuff that have this natural affinity for, but somebody else can do the front end. I'm involved in another vertical for the film industry, and it's the same thing. That person works in the.
Like, I'm not in sales. Yeah, you could, like, if I'm building a custom solution for you, I'm excited about what I can do for your business. And, as FileMaker developers, like, we know what we can do. We can do anything, like, unless you're talking crazy crap like virtual reality or, stuff like that. It's not really a business system anyway. We can do it. If there's any logic involved there, we can do it. I find the things that we can say no to is just, it's diminishing daily, monthly. If there's any logic, and if there isn't logic, we can sit with the person and be like, well, why are you doing that? And we can nut it out and get it to a point of logic. So, but yeah, you're right. Like, if you can get a good trade-off of industry expert versus technology expert, if I'm being liberal, and then go to market, see what happens, So yeah, good question, Charles. So that's how we ended up here, I guess. And I guess for the people at home there's a lot of work in a vertical. Like, you build a custom, if I'm liberal again, it's a chop shop. You cut corners, you hard code stuff. Whereas I'll give a quick example here, right? And I'm logged in as developer, but here's all the configurable items for this thing. So you've got to soft code all of this stuff.
Sorry to interrupt you, Damien. Are you guys getting a proper screen share? Mine's like this little sliver in the middle.
No, mine's a sliver as well.
Yeah, maybe Damien, can you?
Happened.
Yeah, can you reshare your screen? Maybe a Zoom thing. I'm not sure. Maybe end your share and then reshare again, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I'm just getting this like little thing down the middle. I thought it was just me, but
Oh no, I got it.
or it might be on your desktop or something. I'm not sure.
Well, I was sharing an application rather than a
There we
screen.
go.
Now,
Okay, that's better.
can you see
Thanks.
is that better?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Sorry, first time listener, long time caller. So this is all the configurable items for a vertical. So you just can't soft code an address. Sorry, you just can't hard code an address in a vertical. So you've basically got to have a placeholder for everything and then reference that. So, which is great. If you started it and you're like, this is going to be a vertical, you can provision all this. Otherwise, you've got to go and find, like, where's a good example? Here we go. So this is a dynamic tax, a worldwide dynamic tax API. So I need to know like the state, the zip code, the city, API keys and all this kind of crap. But this has got to be dynamic. You can't hard code this. So with a vertical, you've got to provision anything that's configurable in like a single area that you can just reference. And there's a lot of work in that, I guess, is what I'm trying to point out. But if you want to build a vertical, start this way and reference everything centrally. Bit of a side note there. So yeah, so I think like any questions there? No, everyone's done.
Did you when you were first building this, did you kind of learn that the hard way about abstracting all your settings and things like that?
Yeah, like I kind of had an inkling at the start that this would be greater than
Oh.
And then on startup, you reference that, stuff like that. But it just got, once you start building it, like for instance, you start using Xero, so then, which is an accounting platform. So then we need a private key and a public key and all this specifically to the client. So then you start having to build this in a dynamic way that it just loads dynamically. And what I'll give you an example of here is, with the BetterForms login, is that it reads from here. So it's completely dynamic. It'll pull a hero image and a logo image from this database, because everyone gets a different database, right? So if I open up,
so you have just in terms of your multi-tenant architecture, you have separate database or business files in the back end, and a single front end file, or a single front end site, if you will, BetterForms site, and the clients on site are using FileMaker Client. Is that right? Did we lose him or did we lose me?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, there he
I
is.
think we lost him, but he'll come back soon.
you guys there?
Yeah, you'll probably have to reshare. I think you dropped off.
Yeah, Australia. Don't know where you lost me. I'll pick it back up. So we built a order tracker, which is kind of like you order a pizza and you see the guy on the app and he's driving his phone, he's on the map and he's coming to your house. So you can really track where they're at. So I was just like, well, why don't we just do that as well? Now these orders, they range from a build time of like 3 weeks to 6 weeks. So it's a lot longer than your 45 minutes for a pizza or whatever. But I was like, well, these people, they need to be informed of where their order is at.
Damien, can you share your screen again? Sorry, the screen share I think dropped. Or is it just me?
No, it's probably.
Yeah, thanks.
You got it?
Yeah.
So on the right here, I've got this order tracker, which it's pulling data straight from FileMaker. So I'll look this order up. So this is quote this number. So this is the quote. And if I bring this little clock up, it's like a audit trail of what's happened. And on the right here is the same data, but we've dumbed it down for the end consumer because they don't need to know that Dave King did this at this time. They just need to know that it happened, right? So we've got it as Jason, and it's only feeding what we want to. We've dumbed it down. We don't need to know who did what at exactly the millisecond or the second. Dave just needs to, or Kate, as the client is, just needs to know what's happened and where their stuff is. So instead of Kate calling us and being like, "Hey, where are my blinds and shutters?" She now has got this portal she can load at any time, and we put this as a link in any time we communicate to her. So she's now self-served. She doesn't have to call us because we did some analytics. And the number one reason for inbound phone calls is, "Hey, where's my stuff at?" So we completely got rid of that with this little web form.
Can I ask a question?
How are you? Yeah, sure.
Far away.
Is this unauthenticated? So it's just a URL that they go to?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
And how do you send them the URL, Damien? Do you like SMS or text or email?
It's via email. So we've got when they accept a job, they go on to like a mini nurture sequence. So we send them HTML emails, and in the email, actually, I'll show you. It's got to like track my order kind of. It's better for me to show you than to me to try and explain it. Here, so this is an automated email that just gets shot out by the server. So now they've got like, track my order. They click that and it opens this. So throughout when they place an order, there's like a 6-week gap of when they're getting a touch point from anyone, unless they call you. If they call you, they're angry. They're missing out on something. So we've categorically put a 2-week time frame between emails that sends them this and says, "Hey, everything's sweet. You're okay. We've got you covered. We'll call you when we need to." So they can self-serve, right? So they love this. Like the companies, their phone calls have dropped, which means productivity is increased. Customers are no longer angry. Like it's a huge shift. So they love this. And this was probably like half a day, you know?
It really makes the company look like they got their act together. I mean, you could be a really small company and wow, you have this. It's which we draw parallels to any shipping process thing like Amazon or whatever, your order went out, that type of thing. And that really does put the client at ease. I think it's a great a progress indicator, is a great easy add.
Absolutely. And like working with Charles in this, like I looked at Amazon, I literally Googled, delivery portals and found what I thought was the best one. And then just went like, "Charles, how can we get this?" Like, he's like, "Oh, we've got an accordion." Boom. And then we just put in like, all this just comes out of a JSON calculation straight out of FileMaker. And it's live. Like they refresh, I change something, it's straight away live. Like it's really, again, like I said, like as FileMaker developers, we're really kind of in this box of B2B, like we're business and our customers are business and we'll do everything inside that circle. Now we're able to extend that to their customers. So that I find that huge. Like if I was to get a web developer to do that, like just try and explain that, like how do you get the data? Oh, it's from FileMaker. From what? And I can straight away change that by going manage database. I can go to, this is a quote. So I can go to quote and I can go to as JSON, right? And I've got different JSONs because I don't want to send everything unless they need it. I've got I've got a full order portal. I've got the order tracker and payment. So I'm limiting the data that I push down because I don't want to push a whole quote and their line items if they're not going to use it, So, oh man, it's
Yeah, and
So
those are
powerful.
cheap too. Those are really cheap to add. Like, sometimes I get people asking, "Oh, it's a calculation." Well, you're never using that calculation anywhere else. You're only using it on that
Exactly.
one record.
It's only the custom web publishing engine or the API that grabs it. So there's no front face load, and so this one is, this is the full JSON. So this actually puts in all the order items so there's a quote and there's order items. So let's say you've got 10 items, this will bring everything down. Well, when you look at the order tracker, you don't need that. That's just wasted data. Like, we don't need that. So that's why I built an order tracker as JSON, because they only need what they need,
And when you build a SaaS solution or whatever, then availability is quite important. And how do you manage that with one FileMaker server?
So so FileMaker server will have like up to 100 files, but custom web publishing or the API, it's the load is so low, it impacts nothing. It's a pure web experience, So there's people that load this, they've got no idea that FileMaker's involved, and nor should they. They don't care. Like, I'm a new customer. I've just bought these blinds. I don't care how you manage your stuff. I just want to know where my stuff is at. Yeah. So the performance is killer,
And do you have a backup server, or if something would happen?
No, I don't. No. I've got a server here. In Sydney, and I've got a server in the US. And you obviously manage the load on it. And if you need an additional server, you would split your customers, but it's custom web publishing, or it's the data API. It's behind the scenes. It's super quick.
But you have FileMaker clients connecting to that as well, right?
As well, yeah. Well, no, I used to, Charles. I used to, which I'll come to that a little bit later.
Just to address the availability and FileMaker and high availability, there's a number of strategies you can do there. It depends on the type of application, your use case, as to what strategy you want to use. If it's pure FileMaker and there's no web stuff, then you can have a backup server and some kind of sync system that it stays in time. If your application doesn't have to have client-to-client statefulness, in other words, I don't need to commit a record and then within that same millisecond the other person can't get that. You're selling tickets online or something like that. Then you can share data amongst them and push the diffs back and forth between it in terms of a sync, using something like Mirror Sync, which works quite well. And then you can have really high availability because any server can drop off and they can all function the same way.
And I guess the architecture that I've got is based on geo. So I'm in Australia, so this is my setup. Whereas I literally copy and paste this whole setup and dropped it on a server in the US, bingo. So it just works, so all I had to do, the only different thing I had to do was route the external data sources in the helper file. But otherwise, I build the page and then I say it's available in Australia and I say it's available in the US. It just works. I don't have to build a second page for the US versus Australia I don't even have to, because I factored in the FileMaker solution, which we call BF, the business file. I've already factored in like the localizations between Australia and the US. So, like AUD versus USD and
you can do the same thing with language. I mean, those are both English, but we have people in with other languages, and there isn't a multilingual example in the BetterForms examples. But to convert a given app into a multilingual app is really, really easy. It just comes down to everywhere you have text, you're turning it into a calculation, and the calculation is just pointing to your dictionary. So you can go through almost every key in BetterForms, like all the labels, the hints, all your text, and just simply exchange that for that calculation formula. And you're up and running. You can pretty much convert an app into a multilingual app in about a day or half a day or so, I'd say.
Yeah, and I know there's ways to do that in FileMaker as well, because my business file is English only, and I've catered to, for instance, in Australia we call it a mobile phone, and in America and Northern America, Charles included, is they call it a cell phone. So I've included localizations like that within the business file to make my life easier, so I don't have to have two different versions, because that just seems like a lot of work. So I guess that's the architecture. And what I want to then add on is where Charles said, like, that everyone's connecting live. So they're launching a live file from FileMaker server. Well, what I've done is a bit different here, which is that I've used a platform called Haplu, and I think Nate's online at the moment, but it is a FileMaker plugin. My lights have just dimmed because it's 10 p.m. It's a FileMaker plugin which manages background sync, which is just huge. So right now, my business file one, sorry, I'm completely distracted because I don't have lights. Let me turn that office lights on. Back on track. So rather than launching a file that is actually hardwired to FileMaker server, they actually open an offline version of this. And then Haplu, which is a plugin which is amazing, and we can probably take that discussion offline, but it enables this offline FileMaker file to sync to FileMaker server via a third-party Haplu server. And
would you mind demonstrating that? Because when I first saw this is some pretty cool stuff.
It's
and
cool.
I don't think everybody knows about these guys.
Should we go off piste? We can go off piste, yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. It doesn't. We don't have to make it a BetterForms rah-rah thing. I'm okay with that.
So let's be like, I'm a massive advocate of both these products. And we didn't really get to show, but this is an online payment this is what Charles and I worked on. So I like the Stripe. So we'll come back to Haplu, but I really like the Stripe widget, right? But I had no control over it. So I was like, Charles, check this out. Stripe's released their elements. So we can now actually do a card element by itself without having the Stripe branded widget. That was my concern, was, well, if I'm a customer of Beautiful Blinds and Shutters, and you send me a link and you're like, pay now, and then you click it, and you've got this little widget that says, like, you have no control over it. I just didn't like that. I really wanted something that was branded and consistent. And, Charles and I did heaps of research. Like, any bill I paid, I'd take a picture of it. I was like, Charles, check this out. My mobile phone bill, my electricity. I was like, check this out. And back to the question earlier that was raised was, is this unauthenticated? Yes, it is, because guess what? Every bill I pay is unauthenticated. I don't have to log in to pay a bill. So I was like, why would I want to add a layer of complexity? Why would I give someone a reason to say no? Just give it to them and let it go. And, a bit of background to that, I completely started with this. Goal number one with FM BetterForms was a customer portal so that someone could do this. And I've completely bypassed the customer portal that someone has to log in and be authenticated. And I'm just giving it an easy way for someone to pay and an easy way for someone to track their order. So the journey's been very interesting, I guess, is what I'm trying to point out. Okay. Any comments there? Any questions? You're crazy? Like,
just for clarification. So you're sending them a link. The link will have some kind of unique ID in the query parameter. That's a question mark.
Yep. There's no, I'm not pushing a token behind the scenes or caching anything. It's a public document, but they're only going to get it.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to pay someone else's bill,
yeah, so that's a good problem to have.
Whatever. Like, if someone wants to track your order, what I don't see the possibility or the need for that to happen. Okay, cool. So what we can see here is this is a live database. So I'm connected via FileMaker, and I can tell this because after the file name, it's got the server name, right? And it's got the version. So that means I'm live. So I know that. So I'm gonna kill this. And this is a developer thing just to manage version control. I didn't change anything. You can see up here Haplu Idle. So Haplu is a plugin. How do I explain this and do Nate some justice? Haplu is a background sync plugin that works on iOS and Mac OS seamlessly. It also enables full notifications. So if someone in my business file, I don't know why my email's going crazy. If someone in my business file, I'm distracted. Hold on. If someone in my business file accepts a job and they receive a deposit on a job, the sales rep for that job will get a notification natively on iOS to their device saying, hey, Johnny, Sarah Jones just went ahead with their quote. So rather than having local notifications, which I'm not a big fan of because I don't see the need, I think it's all from server. Sorry, let me just get this done. Multitasking, it's not real. It never was, by the way. I'll get it from Dropbox. But it's, oh man, I can't explain it without, here we go. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open a production file. I don't know what Nate's going to tell me about what I can and can't say about this, but the background sync is next level. So for instance, if you have a client and their internet connection is not good, this is exactly what you need, because the FileMaker file is running as if it's local, because it is, and that's all it knows. That was the wrong file.
That's FileMaker. Yeah, FileMaker Go is local.
No, even FileMaker Pro, like it doesn't care. It doesn't. FileMaker as an application will run, and it runs as if it's local. So forget about it being hosted, right? You're going to get the performance of. Sorry, if I get the one from the US, that's the best one to do because that's a production file. If you think about when you work on a FileMaker file, and there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes here, and it's good that you can see my entire desktop. So Charles talked about continuous deployment, which is also part of this. But I'm going to open this file. This is a legit client in Hawaii. Now, they're in Hawaii. The closest Amazon server is in Southern California. So their lag is horrendous. Like, it's actually better for me to log on to their file in Australia. So Australia to Hawaii, than from them, Hawaii to California. So anyway, they would get spinny wheel of death, like all these kind of lags. And in my opinion, the system is actually built quite well, so it should handle all of that. Anyway, now they can work. You can see here, the word here says local. So the file is actually stored right here on my desktop. When I do the install, it's not on the desktop, it's buried behind the scenes. Now the Haplu plugin is actually working off SQL databases, and it pushes the data behind the scenes via ODBC. Sounds, for a FileMaker developer, sounds crazy. You don't have to worry about it. It handles it all. It's just brilliant. So right now, you can see here, Haplu Idle. I can go about my business. I can search. I can search for people, and I get local FileMaker experience, which means there's no lag. We're not waiting on the server. There's no data being pushed back and forward. It's all happening behind the scenes via SQL to FileMaker server. And it's super quick. Like when I was doing these tests and like I had an iPad and I had this on my screen, I was like, this is crazy. But you just get the full FileMaker experience, and this just pushes data behind the scenes. It's amazing. So the point is here, it's a background sync functionality. I'd used Tim Dietrich's FM Easy Sync. I'd used Goya's REST-FM Sync. I had not touched 360works Mirror Sync, but either way, all three of those programs were a manually tripped sync. So you go out to the field, which is what these guys do. They go out, they're at your house, they're with an iPad, they quote your house, and then they're like, cool, I need to get this data back to the server before the client rings up and accepts the quote, because it's not even ready yet on the server. So this just manages it behind the scenes. So yeah, I don't know, Charles, maybe we can push a link out to Haplu and what it does.
I did post it on in our chat. Maybe if we have a bit of time.
Yeah, is Nate there? I sent him the link.
I just asked if you can also do server to server sync, which is something I think would be really, really valuable. And maybe he can jump in at the end with a few words on that, because that's something that
I haven't done server to server, but right now I'm not even deploying like live files. I'm like, so when you talk about continuous deployment, which is probably how I ended up on this tangent. So right now this is great. Like I'm using this file and I've got it locally stored. That's great. But what if the developer makes an update? How does that happen? Well, I've built a continuous deployment FileMaker file. So I actually send them a launcher. I don't send them like, when I deploy the file, I don't say, this is how you access it. I give them a launcher file, and what that launcher file does, and I was trying to find the image I sent you, Charles, when I was trying to show you what it does. But anyway, it goes, if I bring up my keynote, I may be able to kind of hack it up on the fly. So I guess Haplu just works. It pushes data for FileMaker server, and then any changes that are made on server get pushed to Haplu, and Haplu distributes it to any offline file. So whether that's FileMaker Pro offline, or whether that's a iOS SDK app or FileMaker Go. No, it probably doesn't do FileMaker Go. It just magically works behind the scenes. Like it's crazy for anyone who's done any kind of field deployments where you don't have internet out there. Your users still need full functionality, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. But the launcher file effectively, oh God, can I even
So just to make sure I fully understand. So basically you're deploying a standalone FileMaker file.
Correct.
Clients using Haplu to sync back to your FMS servers, which means that you don't have an actual client connected to your FileMaker server. It's probably actually increases stability and availability.
100%, because so the server loads dropped, the server connection is via ODBC or JDBC. That's Nate's world. And
what functions actually, so your FileMaker server is actually functioning a little bit, like, is there any business logic that's running on that, on the file that's in there then, really?
There's a tiny bit. So we run automated SMSs and automated communication.
I see. So it's acting more as a Papa Bear hub kind of thing. And
pretty much, so the day before,
that's really interesting.
Someone's coming out to your house tomorrow at 4 p.m. The server, because it's the only place we can make sure that this happens, the server then spins out all the SMSs and shoots out the SMSs and says, hey Charles, we'll see you at 3 p.m. tomorrow and we'll quote up your place. That's
think that's a really
literally.
interesting deployment system. It's actually the first time I've seen something like that.
Yeah, there's two reasons. Number one is any automated creation of data, which is sales targets, which and again it's very solution specific, right? But I won't even go to the detail, but any data you need to create on a categoric recurring instance. So like monthly, we need Johnny's sales target for December. We need to say that was $5,000. You can't do that on a client unless you're going to tie the client up, and then you're putting all this work on the client file down here. It doesn't need to do that every time it launches. Plus, when you're on the iOS SDK, the program doesn't actually launch. It launches once, so you can't work on first window load, which is why you've got to pass some stuff off to your server. So that's the first thing, is creating data that you need. Second thing is operational, which is SMSs, emails. So as I said, we send categoric emails every 2 weeks. Hey, everything's okay. Don't spaz out. The third thing is we're actually using that server as a CalDAV host as well. So everyone that connects to this server, they get like their calendars, their native calendars. If I bring this up, so this here, these two guys' calendars, this is legit data. If I get rid of everything, this is pulling from their FileMaker solution right here. So if I drag and drop this, that's going to update their FileMaker data, and it has. Nice. So that's why we need to still have the server in place. Right. And also for FM BetterForms, if the data's not here, FM BetterForms, which actually reads from the file, which is on the server, it won't work as well. So FileMaker server is still there. We're not trying to bypass any of that.
What is the time? Like, do you have clients that have more than one terminal?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and then so the data flow would go from let's say front desk up to the server, and then that would resync back to the client number 2, the back desk.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And you can actually use a hosted file, but I just find FileMaker over the WAN, the wide area network, just doesn't perform as well. And as soon as someone has had this FileMaker offline with background sync, see you later. You're not going to get them hosted again. Why would they want that? And when you're talking about businesses, they can't control how good their internet is. Like they lose their brains. They literally go like, oh my God, like I used to get the spinning wheel of death. And you're like, you don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, that's really neat.
That's huge. It's huge. But again, like you just can't get rid of FileMaker server, because BetterForms needs to be on a server, right? It just can't read from a local file. So the whole infrastructure needs to be in place to work.
I'm currently developing a very sort of similar architecture with, and we're actually one-to-one streaming recording all of the build out. It's a Floristware delivery app, and there's about 6 hours, I think, in building now. So it's about 2/3 done. And then we'll jump to the recording, how we build the back end. And it's the same type of idea. It's a vertical where there are individual clients, just like you have, that are on site, effectively offline. And then in this case, the client will sync up to the delivery app server through an API. BetterForms has a REST API built in.
And there has to be a single source of purity. There has to be a single place where you know this is correct. And that to me is FMS, FileMaker server, the file on the server. So maybe what I'll show, if anyone's interested, is show you the launcher file and how the continuous development works.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting.
Shout out, like I don't mind.
Can I just ask, do you have to install the Haplu on each deployment as well as FileMaker?
Yeah, it's a plugin, so it's kind of like base elements, right? So it just goes in your plugin folder. If I just go here, so there you go.
Okay.
It's just like a plugin. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It is it's crazy what that stuff does. I love the pure iOS experience, and that's really what I'm trying to provide. And to me, it was always at an arm's length with FileMaker, and I was one of the first people to have apps published on the App Store with the SDK, but just the having to press sync, like we're software developers and it's 2020, like how do you proposition that to your clients? Hey, yeah, we've got everything covered, but your installers, when they go out and install the product, they need to press sync or else your office doesn't know about it. Have fun, see you later. Like, I just don't see that as a viable proposition. That's just my opinion. I don't know. But what I'll do is show you the launcher that I actually give to people. And this is based off what Nate has done on iOS. So with his plugin, he's got complete control of iOS, whereas on FileMaker, we don't, because we're governed by FileMaker being the application we're working in. In iOS, if you use the iOS SDK, you get a lot of leeway there. And so continuous deployment, and I guess I'll explain what that means, because I probably haven't explained that well. So we'll go full disclosure here. I don't care what you see, but basically, what am I trying to show here? This is not a good example. How can I explain this? So for instance, right? So because you're now deploying all these different versions, right? Let me try and spitball this live. Because everyone's got an offline file, right? You're working on the master file. Here we go. Someone tell me to stop if this gets too bad, right? You've got a master file of your vertical, which is the current version. Let's say this guy's on version 001 and the master is on 002. Does this make sense? Because you've now got parallels out there, if that makes sense. You've got parallel versions. And when you think about a vertical, this can propagate massively, right? So I've got a master version. Guess what? I've just changed in the master version. For example, what I'm doing right now is Xero has changed their authentication from OAuth 1.0A to OAuth 2.0. So I now need to change all my files to do that. So I work on the master, right? It just floats around. It's not connected to anything. So when I give people the launcher, right, this is what I actually give people. It'll go, hey, I want to know what version I've got installed locally. So it'll grab this 1.001. And then it'll go, I know where the master is because it goes through the FAT controller. The master is actually 1.002. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. I'm going to download this. And then I'm going to, as a zip file, then I'm going to unzip it. Cool. And then now I'm going to open it for the person without them having any idea of what's going on. So it's self-managed deployment. And that's really what I think, Charles, you were getting to with continuous deployment. So I can just continue to work on this, right? I can make this, forgive the crudeness, but I can make this green. I can do any changes to the master file, which is centrally stored and referenced here. So whenever anyone opens the launcher, it goes, hey, what version am I on? Is that the latest version? Oops, go grab this one and give me that one. Does that make sense?
So
Yeah, that's great.
doesn't Happily then have to synchronize all the data when you do that?
It does. However, what I do is every day, so this here, there's another layer of complexity here. Whenever I update the master and I say this is an official update, like I'm happy to push this out, this will go and update a zip version of every one of my business files in Dropbox, is how it happens. So when the launcher opens up, the data will be a maximum of 24 hours old.
Okay.
Right.
So
So the
then
syncing.
HapBlue just goes, cool, I just update the last 24 hours.
That's interesting. That's an interesting approach. So you're basically keeping your archive, your new version. It's preceded with data already.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Because why would you sync it from scratch?
Yeah. So those versions. So that version of software that's running on the cloud is exactly the same as what's running on the device. Then. Same
Sorry,
file.
what's the question,
The
Charles?
BF1 file and your master file. Well, assuming that they're up to date, that are you just grabbing the data, or is it an actual replication of the file? Like, are you
It is.
running
So
the
I
same?
still keep, even though they're accessing it offline, I still have a server version, because the server version is what I call the truth. This is really where the data is. So, and the master file is actually on the same server, right? It's kind of irrelevant, but this business file is backed up every 24 hours as per FileMaker. And then what I do is I catch it and I zip it, and the launcher goes, hey, where's the zip version? Because it comes through the FAT controller, or the gateway really, and says, hey, this is my file name. My file name is BF-1. What should I do now? So the FAT controller is quite key in this whole process. Nothing opens unless they shoot through my FAT controller. And this FAT controller, here we go. If I open that, and I use Otto as the migration tool, brilliant as well. But if I give you, now remember, this is a developer only database. So if I go, of course I misspelled it. On timer script, don't do them. We'll just go behind the scenes. If I go to suppliers list, just to give you a bit of context about how this all works, go here, show all. So here on the left-hand side, because remember, this is just for me, so I don't care what it looks like, but here's all the version numbers. So when they open the file, it comes here and says, what's the version number? Cool. They're on version 1.9999013. What's the master version? Well, the master version is 1.99905 because this is hard coded. So it goes, okay, these guys need an update. Cool. Kill their local device, their local file, download the latest version, open it, and then HapBlue will catch them up for that last 24 hours. Because that's all they're missing, right? So yeah,
I've made a same solution. Like it's funny to see. I also have a solution for a client with ours, also with a launcher file, with checks when it's starting, if the versions are okay. But how? Because they don't use the full table with all the context. They only get a small set of it. Well, small, about 3,000 to 5,000 records of contact records. How? For us, it's not possible to see the base file before they use it. So they have to, put in some info, and then the server knows which contact records they need. How performant is HapBlue at that point? If you would like to have 3,000 or 5,000 records, is it more performant, faster than the other solutions?
Massively, because it's behind the scenes. So it doesn't interrupt the FileMaker user interface because it's using behind the scenes SQL. So if you see here, it's using a couple of databases behind the scenes. So it does not interrupt the user interface, which is one thing that I personally had a problem. Not everyone will, but I did. I was like, well, if I use Facebook, when it updates, I can still use Facebook. I don't need to stop and wait, because my syncs would take a minute to a minute and 30 seconds. And I was like, my users are like, well, that's fine. Like, we hop in the car and we press sync, and guess what? They drive and they switch cell towers. So the signal drops, sync fails. Like, and how do you educate your end users? Like it's 2020. They should not have, in my opinion, personally, they should not have to have that experience. But as you were saying, your launcher file. So my launcher file is dumb. It has no data. It's just, hey, this is my file name. The launcher file goes, hey, this is my file name. Go to the Fat controller using the FileMaker API and tell me, I know my version number because here it is here, right? Very simple. When they open the file, I export a text file that says, this is my version number. So then when the launcher opens, I don't have to access this file. It's just a dumb text file in the same folder. I go, cool, give me this version. Great. And then I'm going to go to the Fat controller. The Fat controller says the current version on the server is, is 43. If we just look at the last two letters. So you're now out of date. So we're gonna kill your local file, just delete it. And now we're going to download that from Dropbox because it's quick. It's a content delivery service rather than from FileMaker, which is not. And then we're going to open it for you. So the user, all they do is down the bottom here, they click a shortcut link and it'll do that automatically. If there's no updates, it just straight away opens this local file. If there is an update, it'll say, hey, chill out, we're updating you. It'll take less than a minute and then you have the latest version. So the end user's got no idea what's going on. And that was kind of what we're trying to achieve, because prior to this, which was 10 days ago, I would have to call the guy in Hawaii and be like, hey, I need your computer. Can you team viewer me? Yep, cool, okay. Log on to his computer where I'd buried the files locally, delete them, pull it out. Like, it was just a nightmare. So continuous deployment or whatever it's less work for me and it's less admin work. If you think about what I was doing there, it's not development work. I'm moving files, deleting files, down. Like that's not software development. That's admin, and who needs that? So yeah, but it's great. And you also get, like, with the Haplu thing, you get notifications. So the logic that I've built in is that when someone hits their sales target, I hit their manager with a notification that says Johnny's just hit their sales target for the month. You know, like you can just dial it in the same way that you can with FileMaker. If there's logic involved, you can build it. So this is a really great product, and without these products, you know, like FM BetterForms and Haplu, like I wouldn't be trying to push my product because it would just be inferior. Like the work that I have to put in behind the scenes it would suffocate. I'd be doing this 24/7. I don't need to do any of that stuff now. So
the great thing is, I mean, you can really leverage your FileMaker skills. Like you're still developing on FileMaker most of your time.
Yeah, as I said earlier, like I don't know JavaScript. Like I was literally the guy that was just inside the FileMaker walls. That was it. You know, and you know, Charles would be like, "Oh, let's do this," and like I watch and I learn. I try and learn, but FileMaker is my native skill set. Like I'm not a JavaScript person. I have no intention of learning JavaScript, if I'm brutally honest. But the ability to control web forms quite easily with BetterForms, like it's killer, you know, like I now want, and I guess, here we go. What I'll show you is, I guess from Eric's prezzo and discussion a couple of weeks ago, and what Charles had said about API first, I didn't do any of that. Didn't do any of it. I used basic FileMaker skills once the data comes in from FM BetterForms and scripted it. There's far better ways of doing it, but that's not where I am. You know, I was like, okay, cool. If I come down to integrations, 0, FM BetterForms, like Charles he'll laugh at me 100% here. Here's the order tracker on form request. Well, that's a good one. That's bad.
No, that's what honestly, that's what it should be. It should be just a little bit of code.
It should be, but I wasn't You know, like
Yeah.
you were, I need to give a bad example. Why can I not find a bad example? Secure payment. Here we go. So when someone makes a payment, here we go. No, that's too easy. I can't find a bad one. But anyway, I'm just using FileMaker scripting. You know, like get the data, go find the record, and then run this script. Charles would be doing.
No.
API
Actually,
stuff,
not so much. You don't need to pass, if I'm going to really code review, in line 34, you didn't need to pass the global variable, but that's okay.
Yeah, here we go. So what I'm trying to explain here is, I guess, the difference between Eric's approach, which is like maybe Eric, did Eric write that knowing FM BetterForms and then building it?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to think
Yeah,
so.
he just started his project about 6 months
mine's
ago.
like 5 years of development, and then I'm like adding FM BetterForms. So here you go, script heavy, but I don't care. I can understand this. I can read it. Knowing what I know now, would I have written it differently? 100%. But
yeah, you know what?
I can debug this quite easily.
It's not until your script gets more than about a page or so. If you're going more than about a page and a half here, then you can start to say, well, can I refactor my code a little bit? Can I simplify it a little bit?
Yes, and Charles, you need to remember you're an engineer, so you've got that. You've got that. You know? Whereas I'm not an engineer, you know. But I'm just trying to point out here that API first is great. I would do that on my next build, on the next project I did. Could I retrofit that easily? Well, maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. But you don't have to do API first. Like, look, super simple. Enter find mode, go to this layout, find it, do this. You can adapt this really easily, and way to go, Charles. That's all I'll say. Way to go, Charles.
Well, you don't realize it, but we actually, I mean, just the way we script, Doug's getting a phone call. The way the script breaks things down into your hook scripts, that is actually kind of it's a separation of concerns already. And I did put a lot of thought into that, in the sense of I wanted to make sure that at the very least, your stuff is all in separate scripts and separate folders, and then you'll continue to develop like that, and that keeps it already clean. Just by default. So that's a start. That was great, Damien. That was really. I didn't realize how much. I've seen bits and pieces, but there's a ton of ancillary stuff to your main application that you have into your ecosystem.
I've just massively embraced BetterForms. And what I didn't actually show you, can I still have 2 minutes, Charles?
Sure.
Good. What I didn't show you is, so because I'm a vertical provider, I need to get all of these like beautiful blinds. I need to get all this information about them before I can onboard them, right? So whilst I've created FM BetterForms for these guys' customers, I also did the same thing for them, because I was like, well, there's no value in previously I had to call these guys and be like, hey, what's your business number, right? Let me get the I guess the point is, I don't need to display it, but I've now used this for my clients and also my clients' clients. So it's now going both ways, you know? And I've completely now, there's a 6-step process. Hey, who are you? Please pay an onboarding fee. Give me all your business information. Tell me who or the people that are going to use this program are, and give me your suppliers and what products you want to use. And there's another one, but that's now completely automated. It's pushed to them. I'm now minimally involved on the onboarding process, whereas previously this was like 4 to 6 hours, and that's not just like a start stop. It's like 20 minutes here, 40 minutes here, and now that's completely done by FM BetterForms. Like it's It's brilliant. Like I've just got rid of a whole bunch of labor. Look at this. Look at all this data I need to catch. This is now automated, sends them to FM BetterForms. They fill this out. If they don't fill it out properly, they get an email 24 hours later saying, hey, we're missing whatever fields are empty. We're missing that, fill it in, or else we're not going to set you up. I would have to do this manually, like phone, person to person.
Yeah.
So not only have I implemented it downstream, it's also upstream. And once it clicks, I just think you just go, holy shit! Like I can do a whole bunch of stuff here that I had to do previously manually. So yeah, I think it's good to show not only what my customers, because these are my customers, where they can pay online, but also my customers can now pay online. Like, why wouldn't I do that? You know, like, are you using Xero? Cool. What payment gateway are you using? Cool. So yeah, north and south, I guess. You do your customers and you do yourself, and you automate what you can. Yeah.
No, if I want.
Any questions, any queries, any whys?
But it's okay. All right.
Damien, I got a quick question for you. You said you have used some of the other sync tools out there. Performance-wise, how will you find Hapla to be? Like if you're doing a full sync rather than just doing your 24 hours pre-seed method.
Exactly, and just remember that's only for deploying new files. So the user day to day, it happens behind the scenes, and it's brilliant. Like the user does not have to be involved in it. So it kind of works like if you imagine a FileMaker server, like if you log on to a hosted file, FileMaker just manages your data connection and whatnot. And it just moves the data, you know, if Sally's over there and she turns the customer's name to Joan instead of John, whatever, it moves. The same thing happens. It just removes the manual process, because the ones that I tried, like FM Easy Sync and REST FM Sync, were great. They worked, but it was manually triggered. And I just personally was not happy with that in years ago. I've been endlessly looking as to how that can be done, and happily solved it. And plus,
how does it handle conflict resolution?
The same way FileMaker does, yeah. First in, best served, yeah.
Actually, I think Nate's on the call there. If you can jump in and say a couple words, yeah. So that would be probably good if he's listening still.
Yeah, but I have not had an issue. And you there, Nate?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
How does it handle conflict resolution?
Well, there isn't any conflict resolution. What occurs is I'm essentially logging your modification to one specific field down to like I think the 100th of a second, I think microseconds, even maybe past that point. So if two people edit the exact same field on the exact same record in the exact same table in the exact same 1/1000th of a second, then I will then sort by a secondary key, and the person that wins that key is the winner of that edit.
What would happen if system A is offline, system B is offline, system A changes first name, system B changes his first name? So then you're just doing an order of change then? And when they both go back online, how does that work?
It's based on the time it reaches the server, because the server holds the UTC timestamps for all posts. So if you make a record on an airplane and you're flying halfway around the world, obviously there may not be data connectivity on that airplane for an order that you make. So when you get halfway around the world and you get off the plane and your phone's in your pocket, it will push as soon as the internet is established to your iPhone, for example.
So that's interesting that you said that. That point is so you're not having to open the device or anything like that. You said the phone's in the pocket and it just boom.
The
On iOS,
the FileMaker essentially passes data off to a local SQLite cache. And this is also the same for Mac. I could easily run the Mac without connecting to a server, as well as the iPhone, because they're offline data files. And as you work in your file, in your FileMaker file, your only connection truly is to a local SQLite database file setting on device. Then you run Haplu plugin that runs services and background functions and really awesome, robust Apple frameworks and APIs that they produce that we can't use through FileMaker proper. It communicates with that SQLite cache. And so I can essentially do anything I want without FileMaker Pro's involvement. My involvement is my source code works with that cache data. And so essentially the FileMaker Pro file that you're working on Go, SDK, or Mac is always connected as far as it's concerned.
And how would server-to-server sync work, Nate?
Have you done server-to-server, Nate?
I have, but I haven't had anyone request it to manage like in their production environment yet. All you would do is add listeners and the plugin to the server. And as you modify in custom web publishing engine, there's an installation process where you drop a .war file in your web publishing folder that creates a Haplu listener service on your FileMaker server. And then you'd put in a server-side, either WebDirect plugin, server-side scripting plugin, and you install plugins like you normally would, like install base elements. And so anything that's happening server-side, it would post to Haplu platform. And Haplu platform is, as you mentioned earlier, sort of the hub that holds all the data, and all these other wheels come off of that. So whatever API, and Damien came to me and said he wanted to add the Twilio SMS integration. And so all I had to do is create a connector on the Haplu platform to listen for a webhook that I gave to him. And he would inject data straight into the sync framework. And this would be your replicating framework. So right now, my biggest client has 500 devices, and some of the and across like 30 different department stores. And they just went through the Christmas season, which is their busiest time for sales and retail. And they were doing somewhere around 1.5 million edits and transactions to the file per month. Maybe it might even been a little more than that. I don't think I finished that 4th week of analysis, but about 3 weeks it was. And to answer your time question, your speed question, you can do about, and a lot of this varies greatly on how old your iPad, how old your Mac is. Obviously, faster processors, I can leverage more cores and more threads to do faster syncing. But you can do in a really large 2 gigabit data file, because my main client has about some of his retail locations carry about a 1.7 gigabyte FileMaker file, which is pretty large. And syncing to that file is about 60,000 to 90,000 record changes in about a minute 20 seconds. But you got to keep in mind, you don't actually observe that many 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Exactly.
It could actually be running on your nightstand while you're sleeping, or while you're walking at the park, walking your dog. We've completely eliminated the need to have a FileMaker script do anything. And that's what you're going to find with all these other sync providers, is you have to script out all these syncing activities and bounce around these layouts. So you can't do any sort of background threading component to this. And And so this is what has helped that process, as Damien has said, with the waiting. And so right now with iOS 13 changes, we get about 24 seconds of background time, and that time will increase as users use your app a lot. So in Damien's situation, if his installers use the app daily throughout the day constantly, I can actually sync up to about 10 to 15 minutes, every 10 to 15 minutes for 24 seconds. In 24 seconds in the background, I can move about 10,000 records. So if he's doing that 6 times an hour on a highly active, and Apple has an algorithm that controls battery life and all that stuff on iPads and iPhone. It's built into iOS. I can't change that. They control that heavily. They control the security heavily. But I have done testing where I could do it in about 2 to 3 weeks of constant usage. Your rating of the app goes up with that algorithm. You can do about 60,000 records an hour without the app even being open.
So that's interesting how that works. Yeah, that's really neat.
It's fascinating, and I'm sure Nate's not doing it justice right now, but having been through the sync process with several different, I guess, free providers, I never looked at, I had discussed paid providers with other people that had experiences with, for instance, MirrorSync. The big difference that I found is that the sync providers I'd looked at were at a record level, right? So you change a record, bang, all of the, every single field gets taken and then synced. What Nate has done is actually at a field level. So if you modify one field, we're not syncing that entire record. We're syncing that because his is transactional. So there's a transactional at a field level, which is huge compared to, REST-FM sync. If I synced one record, but that record, for whatever reason, had 200 fields, those 200 fields are going to have to sync. So Nate's is actually a transactional log of what has been changed, which is incredibly lightweight. Think about if you're syncing images, but you're not changing the images, you're changing a field about let's say you got a 15 meg image and you change the description, you don't need to sync the file. The file hasn't changed. What Nate's Haplu does is it just syncs that field, which says the description has changed from file 1 to file 2.
And Damien, on the topic of images, if you've never experienced building a FileMaker database and using thousands of records with container filled data and trying to sync that with MirrorSync or any of these other products, it will just lock up your file, or worse, corrupt your file. And I noticed that one of my clients came to me in in his last hour because iOS 13 really broke some of those mechanisms that were creating corruptions, and he was getting dozens of data corruptions a week across his footprint or his deployment. And so what Haplu does is we actually encourage you not to store an image in a container field. We have what is called like a Haplu container field. That is a programmed result on the iOS where I draw native iOS components on top of your FileMaker file. And what you put on your layout is a text field. Let's say my photo text field. And all you store when you're using the Haplu platform is the URL name or the file name of the photo. You will use a custom camera script step. That's a Haplu script step that comes with our plugin. And we'll actually handle all the photo work and container data for you in the background, which is wonderful because I can put that on like a lower priority queue if we need to. So it doesn't interrupt data services. Whereas other sync processes, I don't care about the photos in this specific sync. I just want the new orders. I want the content of the order. I don't care if they took an additional photo of, let's say, a window that they're trying to put blinds on. I want to see the measurements. And so with other syncs, you have to wait for all that work to be done, even on the photo. So we can actually create different levels of priority of how you want to treat your data. And if you have it, and I urge you to go look at the video regarding PhotoSync because it was incredibly, incredibly difficult to accomplish. It took almost 1.5 years to do this one thing because you're messing with C++, memory pointers, stuff like that. It's real nasty, it gets real messy, and you walk a really fine line until you get it right. And it's been pretty stable for the client that's in retail that's been running this for almost 1 year now, just under 1 year now. And so when you're able to pull the photos out of your solutions will become lightning fast. And I will say they are they're so fast on this platform. They're actually 3.5 times faster than an actual iOS native application.
Yeah.
So native applications on iOS aren't even as fast as this.
That's pretty neat. Maybe what we could do is we're getting a little tight on time here.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
my hot water
there's-
tank in my house blew out the other night, and the guy's coming to fix it up in a few minutes. So I'm gonna have to jump off. But
Yeah, I
Damien,
think
that was
there's
thanks for sharing that. That was great.
Yeah.
And just coming up, we skipped a week last week, and I wanted to know if you guys like every week, every other week. I skipped last week because Chris, one of our he actually was just on a second ago. He was presenting last week, and I don't know if that recorded. I thought it was recorded, but if we see it, we'll post it in our Slack. And
yeah, so Charles Saline just posted it last night, so I'll post it.
Okay, yeah. You want to post it in the channel, the announcements one. It's pretty neat. It's a UI interface for building toaster alerts, so it's kind of cool. But next week, if we don't have anything, maybe I'll lead off with a little bit of fundamental JavaScript stuff, and we'll talk about FM Ham, which is a module that we developed. We developed in-house for handling. It's a headless. Ham stands for headless authorization module, and it's basically a technique for managing privileges and rights and limits and all kinds of things. And it's what we use under the hood in BetterForms, the application, to limit how many servers you can set up and all these kinds of things. And it's really, really powerful and flexible, but you can use it for all FileMaker stuff. And it works internally as well as externally on applications like remote applications like BetterForms and things like that. So we've been wanting to post that one up, and we'll do that. There's a lot of other meetup groups. I don't know if you guys have been attending, but I'm finding I have to actually not attend so many because there's so many. But so thank you all for coming out to this one. Like they always say, we know you have choices. So if you have any other questions or anything, a shameless plug here because I do eat. You can book demos with FM BetterForms. You can all of our emails have a demo link, and all of my communications have a link to a calendar. Same thing goes for support. Officially, we don't really limit or throttle support calls and things like that. We'll always jump on a call really, really quick. So I think we're going to finish off with that. If anybody has any questions, I want to do some picks and things like that, but we don't really have much time for that. So I think we'll leave it at that. Does anybody have any other questions or anything?
Thank you, Charles, for FM BetterForms. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. All right. Have yourselves a great week. And
Ciao.
ciao. Take care. Thanks for coming out.